I didn't find out my relationship was over because he cheated. I didn't catch him texting another woman. There was no lipstick on a collar, no hotel receipt, no dramatic confession. I found out because a coworker sent me a YouTube link while I was sitting at my desk, halfway through a completely ordinary workday. Hey, is this you? I stared at the message for a second, confused, then tapped the link. Dating a Narcissist, Episode 12, When She Tried to Control My Career Dreams. The title alone made my stomach tighten. I hadn't even pressed play yet, and something already felt off, like seeing your own name on a door you were never meant to open. The thumbnail loaded slowly. My boyfriend's face, my boyfriend, was front and center. His jaw was tight, his expression carefully managed. His eyes looked strained, glossy, in that restrained way men get when they're holding something back rather than letting it out. The lighting was soft, intentional, not emotional, calculated. The kind of image meant to draw sympathy without looking weak. We had been together almost 3 years, living together for one. I knew his habits, his rhythms, the way he presented stories when he wanted to control how they landed. I put my headphones on. His voice came through, steady, almost rehearsed. Hey, welcome back. No warmth, no softness, just familiarity, like he'd said it enough times to know exactly how it landed. Today, I need to talk about something that didn't sit right with me. My fingers tightened against the edge of the desk. When I told her, no, I should say her name. There was a brief pause, not hesitation, calculation. Then he said my full legal name. Not a nickname, not a shortened version. My actual legal name, spoken clearly, like it now belonged to the internet instead of my private life. When I told my full legal name, I wanted to start my own business, she completely lost it. The office around me faded. The hum of printers, the click of keyboards, gone. She said I was being unrealistic, that I should focus on my real job like a responsible adult. But here's the thing. She wasn't trying to protect me. She was trying to control me. My heartbeat didn't race. It slowed. That scared me more than panic ever could. That conversation did happen. But not like this. He had wanted to quit his job to sell essential oils through one of those MLM companies. I had suggested, calmly, carefully, that maybe he try it as a side hustle first. See if it worked before burning everything down. On YouTube, that advice became control. On YouTube, I was a narcissist. I glanced at the view count. 43,000 views. I clicked his channel. 89,000 subscribers. 15 episodes. All uploaded over the last 4 months. All while he was sleeping next to me every night. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, not shock. Recognition. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a breakup. It was a public execution. And I was only just realizing the trial had already been streaming. Before there were thumbnails and titles and strangers arguing about my character in comment sections, there was just us. 2 people who met in a way that felt unremarkable at the time, which is probably why I trusted it. We met through work-adjacent circles, not coworkers, but close enough that our worlds overlapped. Same city, similar schedules, the kind of proximity that makes consistency feel like compatibility. He was attentive from the start, not flashy, not poetic, just present. He asked questions and remembered the answers. He followed up. He showed up when he said he would. I liked that. After a year of dating chaos and half commitments before him, reliability felt like intimacy. Our first date was simple. Dinner at a mid-range place neither of us pretended was special. A movie afterward we barely paid attention to. Conversation that didn't strain or stall. When he walked me to my car, he didn't push, just hugged me, solid and brief, like he understood boundaries were something you respected, not tested. For a long time, he stayed that way. We moved in together a little over a year later, not impulsively. We talked about it, budgeted, compared habits. I had my routines, early mornings, structure, quiet. He was more fluid, more reactive to mood. We negotiated around that, or at least I thought we did. At first, living together felt like proof we were doing something right. Shared groceries, split rent, even chores mostly. I made more money, but we agreed to keep things equal. It mattered to me that he never felt dependent. I wanted partnership, not leverage. He talked a lot about dreams back then, big ones, starting his own business, not answering to anyone, building something that was his. I listened, encouraged him, asked questions. Sometimes I asked too many, about logistics, timelines, numbers. He said he appreciated that I was practical, that I kept him grounded. I believed him. There were moments, looking back, where the balance shifted slightly, Not alarms, more like quiet recalibrations I didn't question at the time. If I worked late, he'd ask why my job always came first. If I suggested caution, he'd hear doubt. If I didn't mirror his excitement exactly, he'd withdraw just enough for me to notice. But he never yelled, never insulted me outright, never demanded. So I adjusted. I softened feedback. I chose words more carefully. I reassured him preemptively. Told myself that relationships required flexibility, and I was good at that. That this was normal compromise, not erosion. We talked about the future, vaguely, but often. No dates, no rings yet, just someday conversations that felt safe because they weren't concrete. And then, without much warning, he started talking about content. At first, it was casual, a podcast idea, then videos, then stories he wanted to share. He said people needed to hear about emotional experiences, about growth, about healing. I didn't object. Why would I? Everyone needed an outlet. He never said my name would be involved, never asked permission, never framed it as something that would include me beyond the abstract. I assumed boundaries where none had been stated. By the time I realized that assumption was wrong, there were already 15 episodes online, and a version of me I didn't recognize was introducing herself to tens of thousands of strangers. The first time I felt something was off, I didn't label it as danger. I labeled it as misalignment, the kind couples talk through if they're mature enough. It started small, tone, mostly. If I asked how his day went and followed it with a question, "What's your plan with that?" His shoulders would tighten, not visibly, subtly, like a door closing one click at a time. "You don't have to interrogate everything," he said once, half smiling, like it was a joke. I laughed it off, told myself I was analytical by nature, that not everyone appreciated structure the way I did. When he floated the idea of quitting his job to go all in on a business idea, I didn't shut it down. I asked how long his savings would last, what the margins looked like, what his fallback plan was. He went quiet. Later that night, he said, "Sometimes it feels like you don't believe in me." The words landed heavier than they should have. I replayed the conversation in my head, every sentence, every pause, trying to find where encouragement had turned into doubt. I apologized anyway, not because I thought I'd done something wrong, but because it seemed easier than letting the silence stretch. After that, the framing changed. If I expressed concern, he called it negativity. If I offered alternatives, he heard control. If I stayed neutral, he said I was emotionally unavailable. None of it was loud, none of it was dramatic. It was the kind of slow narrative shift that makes you question your own role without ever accusing you outright. Then came the phone stuff. He didn't hide his screen, but he guarded his reactions. If I glanced over while he was scrolling, he'd angle the phone away, not abruptly, just enough. If I asked who he was texting, he'd answer, but with an edge, like the question itself was a violation. "You don't trust me?" he asked once. I paused. "That's not what I said." "But that's what it sounds like." I dropped it. Looking back, that was the pattern. He'd ask questions that reframed my behavior as intent. Concern became suspicion. Curiosity became accusation. And then there were the stories. He started recounting our disagreements differently, always casually, always after the fact, to friends, to his sister, sometimes within earshot of me. "She gets anxious about money," he'd say, shrugging. "She needs a lot of reassurance. She worries I'll make reckless decisions." None of those statements were false, but the way he stacked them, one after another, created an image I didn't recognize myself in. I noticed I started defending myself before speaking, adding disclaimers, softening edges, explaining my tone before I even finished a sentence. That's when I felt it, not fear, not anger. Instability. Like the ground under our relationship wasn't cracking, just quietly shifting direction without telling me. I didn't know yet that he was already rehearsing a version of me for an audience. I just knew that somewhere along the way, my voice had started arriving late to conversations that were supposedly about me. By the time I got home that night, I already knew. Not the details, not the scale, just the fact that my boyfriend had been telling the internet a story about me, and I wasn't the hero of it. What I didn't know yet was how complete the rewrite was. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the apartment quiet in that familiar way that suddenly felt staged, like a set dressed to look normal while something rotten waited just out of frame. I started from episode 1, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand what version of me existed now. He didn't sound emotional, he sounded certain. "For the past 3 years, I've been in a relationship with a narcissist," he said, looking straight into the camera. No qualifiers, no uncertainty. He described our first date in detail. The restaurant, the movie, what I wore, the way I smiled, how attentive I was. Apparently that was love bombing now. Episode by episode, memory after memory was relabeled. Concern became control. Boundaries became isolation. Equal finances became abuse. By episode 3, he was crying about money, about how I monitored it, restricted it, made him dependent. I stared at the screen. We split everything. Rent, utilities, groceries. He had his own income, his own accounts. Episode 4 accused me of gaslighting him about cheating that had never happened. Episode 8 made me feel physically ill. Episode 10 was worse. Why I Can't Leave Yet, the title read. The Narcissist's Financial Trap. He explained calmly, persuasively, that escaping me required planning, documentation, legal protection, that he was trapped. I paused the video and sat back. We were still living together. Episode 15 ended with a quiet smile. I'm finally ready to leave, he said. Next episode will be from my new apartment. A Patreon link appeared. I clicked. 3 tiers. 5, 15, 50. 412 patrons. I did the math once, then again slower. He was making thousands of dollars a month by telling the internet I was an abuser. That was the moment the confusion ended. This wasn't venting. This wasn't healing. This was monetized destruction. When I finally called a lawyer, I didn't ask if this was wrong. I asked how fast we could stop it. This isn't just about defamation, he said after watching a few clips. He's using your full legal name, your likeness, your private life, for profit. What do we do? We start with a cease and desist, he said, and we notify the platforms. It cost me $1,500. Worth it. The letter went out on a Friday. By Sunday night, my boyfriend came home furious. You sent me a legal letter. Yes. You're trying to silence me. I'm trying to stop being called an abuser for profit. His jaw tightened. This is exactly what narcissists do, he said. They use power when they're losing control. That was the moment I understood. He hadn't reacted to the letter. He'd already written this scene. After he left that night, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt exposed, like every wall had been listening. Like every conversation we'd ever had was still hanging in the air, waiting to be edited into something it was never meant to be. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't even sit down right away. I stood in the kitchen, hands braced on the counter, breathing slowly until my pulse settled into something manageable. That was always my instinct. Contain first, feel later. My phone buzzed. Messages stacked up faster than I could read them. My mother, why are people asking me if you're abusive? My sister, did you cheat on him? Please tell me this isn't true. A friend from college I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey, I saw a video. Are you okay? My chest tightened, not from guilt, but from the sheer wrongness of it. The way a lie spreads faster than the truth ever could. The way people ask questions that already assume an answer. I opened one of his videos again, watching with a different focus this time. Evidence. I took screenshots of titles, logged dates, saved view counts, noted every time he used my full legal name, every blurred photo that was still obviously me, every private conversation reframed as abuse. I didn't message him. I didn't argue in comments. I didn't post a defense. Anything reactive would only feed the story he was already telling. By the next morning, the emails started. YouTube Legal acknowledged the complaint. Neutral. Procedural. Patreon's trust and safety team confirmed receipt. Then my boss emailed. Can you come by HR this afternoon? That one landed differently. In the conference room, I laid everything out. The timeline, the lawyer's letter, the fact that we were still living together while he told the internet he was planning his escape. This is personal, HR said carefully, but if it starts affecting your work or the company's reputation. I understand, I said. I'm handling it legally. They nodded, non-committal, cautious. When I got home that evening, my phone was blowing up again, this time from him. You're destroying me. Everyone thinks you're insane now. You're proving everything I said. My followers are helping me get a restraining order. I didn't reply. I forwarded every message to my lawyer. That night, he posted a new video. Episode 16, She's Trying to Silence Me. 15 minutes of controlled outrage. Claims that I was using legal threats to intimidate him. That I was abusing the system the way I abused him. That he was terrified, but brave. The video ended with 2 links. Patreon. Cash App. That was the moment something in me went still. Not numb. Resolved. I stopped thinking about how this felt and started thinking about what it was. This wasn't a misunderstanding spiraling out of control. It was a campaign. And campaigns don't end because one side gets tired. They end when someone takes the microphone away. Once episode 16 went live, everything sped up. Not emotionally, logistically. The story stopped being something people whispered about and started becoming something they forwarded. Clips popped up on platforms I didn't even use, short edits, reaction videos, comment threads full of strangers arguing about a version of me they felt entitled to judge. I stopped checking. Instead, I tracked. Episode 17 dropped the next day. This one wasn't just him talking, it was him sitting beside a woman he introduced as an attorney. She specialized in domestic violence and revenge porn cases. The framing was careful, credible, alarmist. He didn't cry. He didn't shake. He looked composed. She spoke calmly about how abusers often weaponize the legal system, about how cease and desist letters could be forms of intimidation, about how survivors had First Amendment rights. He nodded along, occasionally adding details, always vague, always framed to sound reasonable. I sent the link to my lawyer. He called me 10 minutes later. Her attorney is an idiot, he said flatly. The First Amendment doesn't protect defamation, and putting this on video while doubling down helps us. That was the first time I felt the ground tilt back under my feet. Then YouTube responded. They were removing videos that included my full legal name. Patreon followed, reviewing his account for potential violations, profiting off someone's identity without consent. That evening, his channel went dark. Not deleted. Private. He burst into the apartment like someone who'd lost oxygen. What did you do? He demanded. Nothing, I said. YouTube did their job. My entire channel is gone. It's private. You can re-upload without my name. That defeats the point, he snapped. People need to know who you are. The sentence hung between us. So this was never about your healing, I said quietly. It was about destroying me. You deserve it after what you put me through. What did I put you through? I asked. Specifically. He opened his mouth, closed it. You were emotionally unavailable. That's not abuse. You didn't support my dreams. I didn't support a pyramid scheme. You made me feel small. You made me a monster to 89,000 strangers for money. He grabbed his laptop and a bag. I'm going to my mom's, he said. My followers will help me. You haven't won. I'm not trying to win, I said. I'm trying to exist without being called an abuser. He left. His mother came back with him the next day to collect the rest of his things. She didn't look at me, didn't speak, just packed, methodical and cold, like she already knew which version of the story she believed. A few weeks later, the channel reappeared. New name, My Escape Story, Healing After Narcissistic Abuse. The videos were back, edited this time. My name removed, my face blurred. I was my ex, or sometimes just N. Technically compliant. Episode 18 explained why he couldn't use my name anymore. How abusers use legal threats to censor survivors. Episode 19 accused me of stalking his content, of monitoring his digital presence, of making him feel unsafe because I was still watching. My lawyer sent another letter. Watching public content isn't stalking. Calling someone a stalker is defamation. Episode 20 followed immediately. Another legal threat. When will it end? His Patreon was back. More patrons now. Higher tiers. He was making more money than before, this time framed as legal defense. That's when my lawyer sat back and said, okay, now we escalate. The lawsuit didn't bring relief. It brought silence, the heavy kind that presses down on your chest when there's nothing left to distract you. Once papers were filed, everyone else stepped back. Friends stopped asking questions. Coworkers avoided eye contact. Even my phone felt quieter, like the world had decided this was something I needed to sit with alone. That's when it hit me. Not the public damage, not the money, the erosion. I started second-guessing everything, not because I believed him, but because repetition has weight, because hearing the same accusation framed 100 different ways starts to carve grooves in your thinking, whether you agree or not. I replayed conversations in my head at night, staring at the ceiling, asking myself questions I never used to ask. Was I colder than I realized? Did I shut him down without noticing? Did I miss something obvious because I was focused on facts instead of feelings? Logically, I knew the answers. Emotionally, logic felt thin. The worst moments came unexpectedly. Standing in line at the grocery store, pausing mid-email at work, waking up from dreams where I was trying to explain myself and no one could hear me. I stopped dating. Not out of heartbreak, out of fear. How do you open your life to someone knowing they could one day turn your private moments into content? How do you argue, forgive, compromise, when every disagreement could be archived and monetized? The legal bills stacked up faster than I wanted to acknowledge. Every call, every letter, every response carried a price tag. I watched my savings dip and told myself it was worth it, even when the number made my stomach twist. Some nights I wondered if walking away would have been cheaper, if letting him keep the narrative would have cost less than fighting it. That thought scared me more than the lawsuit ever did, because it meant the system almost worked. He was still posting, still reframing, still painting himself as the brave one standing up to power. Subscriber counts fluctuated, but they didn't disappear. People still commented, still donated, still told him he was strong. I felt small in a way I hadn't before, not weak, not helpless, outnumbered. One evening, after another long call with my lawyer, I sat alone on the couch and let myself feel it fully for the first time. Not rage, not sadness. Grief. For the version of my life where disagreements stayed private, where trust didn't feel like a liability, where love wasn't something that could be weaponized against you with a ring light and an upload button. That was the lowest point, not because I thought I'd lose, but because I understood that even if I won, something had already been taken, and there was no court that could order it back. The shift didn't happen all at once. It happened in pieces, quiet ones, sliding into place until the picture finally made sense. My lawyer called me late one afternoon, his tone different from the careful restraint he usually kept. He made a mistake, he said. I didn't ask which one. There had been plenty. Episode 22, he continued, the one where he talks about warning your employer. My stomach dropped. I pulled the video up immediately. He didn't name my company. He didn't say my job title. He didn't have to. He talked about moral responsibility, about whether survivors should alert workplaces when an abuser holds a position of trust. He framed it as a question. Should I warn them? But his eyes were already decided. He looked straight into the camera. Tell me what you think. My lawyer exhaled sharply. That's intentional interference with business relationships. He's threatening your livelihood. For the first time since this started, the law wasn't lagging behind the damage. It was ahead of it. We filed a real lawsuit, not a letter, not a warning, an actual complaint. Interference with employment. Misappropriation of likeness for commercial gain. Violation of the cease and desist. This time, he needed a real attorney, not a content-friendly talking head, not someone who treated litigation like branding. Patreon shut him down the same week. Asking for money to fight an active lawsuit violated their terms. His account disappeared overnight. YouTube followed. His channel wasn't deleted, but it was demonetized. No ads, no fundraising, no sympathy cash-outs disguised as healing. Subscriber numbers started slipping. 89,000 to 82. Then 78. Drama sustains attention. Complexity doesn't. Sponsors quietly backed out. No announcements, no statements, just contracts that didn't renew. He posted episode 23 anyway. I'm being sued. Please help. The video lasted 12 hours before it was removed. That was the moment the narrative broke. Not because people suddenly believed me, but because believing him stopped being easy. A month later, his attorney reached out. Settlement discussions. I sat in my lawyer's office, listening as terms were laid out calmly, clinically, like we were discussing property lines instead of the aftermath of a relationship. He would delete every video about me. He could never reference me again, by name, initial, implication, or story. He would post a retraction. He would pay my legal fees. $8,700. He fought it, claimed hardship, claimed principle, claimed First Amendment. My lawyer slid one document across the table. Patreon earnings, over $40,000. The argument died there. When the agreement was signed, I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. For the first time in months, the future stopped feeling like something he could upload without my consent. The internet didn't explode when the settlement happened. It didn't need to. The silence did the work instead. One morning, I checked his channel out of habit and realized there was nothing left to check. No new uploads, no thumbnails, no carefully worded monologues framed as bravery. The archive that had defined my life for months was gone, scrubbed clean in the early hours of the morning like a crime scene after the tape comes down. The retraction went up at 2:07 a.m. 2 minutes long, comments disabled, no music, no emotion. Some of my previous content contained interpretations that may not have fully represented all perspectives. I'm removing this content and moving forward. Lawyer written, bloodless, empty. By 3 a.m., everything referencing me was deleted. People noticed, but quietly. No outrage, no apology tour, just confusion and then boredom. Without a villain, the audience drifted. Attention is loyal only to momentum. His subscriber count dropped again. 80,000, then 72, then 60. No sponsors came back. They never do once the word lawsuit enters the brand email thread. Patreon was gone for good. He tried pivoting to general mental health content, vague advice, safe topics, neutral language. It landed flat. Without a personal villain, he had nothing sharp enough to cut through the noise. I heard through mutual friends that he moved back in with his mother, that he'd gone back to his old job at the marketing firm, that he didn't talk about me anymore, not because he didn't want to, but because he wasn't allowed to. For the first time since this started, my phone stopped buzzing. No messages asking for clarification. No half apologies from people who'd already decided what they believed. No new links sent, just in case I hadn't seen this one. At work, things normalized slowly, too slowly. Trust takes time to rebuild, even when you're right. A few friendships didn't survive. People who'd shared his videos but never asked me a single question faded out of my life without ceremony. I let them. The legal aftermath lingered longer. Final payments, confirmations, compliance checks. Every email felt like closing another drawer in a room I was ready to leave. Financially, I didn't come out ahead. I spent around $15,000 total. Got back $8,700. I didn't regret it. What surprised me most was how quiet my thoughts became once it was over. No more rehearsing explanations in my head. No more bracing for the next accusation. Just space. The damage didn't vanish, but it stopped spreading. And that was enough to let me breathe again. It's been 6 months. That's how long it took for my life to feel like mine again. Not untouched, not unchanged, but no longer under someone else's editorial control. The strangest part isn't the legal aftermath or the money. It's how ordinary everything looks now from the outside. I go to work. I come home. I meet friends for dinner. I sleep through the night without checking my phone first. Normal returned quietly. I had to explain what happened to more people than I ever wanted to. Some believed me immediately. Some needed time. Some never asked at all and chose the easier story. I stopped chasing those last ones. If someone can watch a stranger monetize accusations about you and never once wonder what your side sounds like, that relationship was already hollow. I'm not dating yet, not because I'm bitter, because I'm careful. Trust isn't something you rush back into after watching it turned into content. It takes time to believe that a disagreement can stay private, that vulnerability won't be clipped, captioned, and sold back to you as proof of who you are. My therapist says that's normal. That hypervigilance is the cost of being publicly misrepresented, that it fades, not all at once, but gradually, as new experiences overwrite old fear. I believe her. Here's what I know for certain now. Someone's truth doesn't get to erase your reality, especially when they're profiting from the distortion. Silence isn't strength when it lets lies grow roots. And protecting yourself, legally, financially, reputationally, isn't cruelty. It's survival. I didn't fight because I wanted revenge. I fought because letting someone rewrite my life for an audience wasn't an option. Even when you're right, the damage still costs you time, money, pieces of trust you don't get refunded. There's no clean victory in situations like this. But there is clarity, and clarity is enough to move forward. My ex once told tens of thousands of people that I was a narcissist who controlled him. The court disagreed. More importantly, I disagreed. And I finally learned that when there's an audience watching, the most dangerous thing isn't being misunderstood. It's being silent long enough for someone else to decide who you are.